So recording has started. Good afternoon, well, evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to look at the impact of COVID-19, the pandemic, on food policy work. Also, today is historic because it is World Food Day, and it's also the 75th anniversary. And we're going to introduce our guest speaker. I'm going to start sharing my screen. So this webinar series is sponsored by the Rural Policy Student Advocacy Group. It's a new group that was started last year. We focus on student-centered advocacy. And so we look at how to be involved in the community. We look at citizen-centered democracy, and we look at addressing challenges in the Mississippi Delta community. If there are any students that are from Mississippi Valley State University and that are tuning in now, you can learn more about our organization and apply to join. I'm looking for students to participate because I want to make sure that students are knowledgeable about being engaged in the community beyond just volunteer work, but to show that they are knowledgeable about civic engagement once they leave Mississippi Valley State University. Our guest speaker is Kenya Collins. She has over 10 years of management experience with political and nonprofit organizations, and some of them are listed. She was the state director for Obama for America, Mississippi. She was the state director for the 2013 Presidential Inauguration Committee. She has worked with the Evers Institute, which is located in Jackson, Mississippi. She's also been the chief of staff and executive assistant to Mayor Eric D. Simmons, and that's in Greenwood, Mississippi. Currently, Greenville. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm near Greenwood. Mississippi Associate Director of Programs for Food Corps. She leads a team of phenomenal AmeriCorps service members as they support communities throughout Mississippi in connecting children to healthier foods through schools. Today, she's going to talk with us about food policy work and how the pandemic has impacted it. She's going to highlight the immense efforts of Food Corps and those students that might be interested in participating in Food Corps. Ms. Kenya Collins is the individual that you need to contact. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, they started the World Food Day, which is celebrated every October 16th. And today is the 75th anniversary of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. And you can recognize it because a lot of times it's just FAO. You are encouraged to ask questions in the Q&A session. You can also ask questions in the chat. If you have any questions for me, my email address is cassandra.hawkins@msvu.edu. And that's your introduction, Kenya. So are you ready?
Sure. I'm ready.
Okay. So what do you want to discuss first?
Okay. So what I'll do is start off talking about our work. And when I say our, I mean Food Corps' work in Mississippi. Well, our work in general, and I'll talk about a little bit about what we do in Mississippi, and how I try to frame our work and how I try to encourage our service members to show up for the communities that we're in. Food Corps is a national nonprofit that partners with AmeriCorps, and we send AmeriCorps service members after a considerable amount of training into public schools to connect children to healthier foods through school. We believe that no matter the child's race, class, or place, that they should have access to healthy, nutritional, and culturally relevant food. So what that looks like, It's definitely in school. Like that's the one thing that's universal. Like it's always in school or related to school. But that looks different from community to community and from state to state that we're in. We're in 17 states, no, 16 states and the District of Columbia, or Washington, D.C., I should say. And in Mississippi, we're working currently in, we have our service members serving in Jackson Public Schools. We have 3 service members in Jackson Public Schools, and we have 5 in the Delta. And they're serving in Cleveland Public Schools, um, West Bolivar County Public Schools, Leland Public Schools, and Hollandale Public Schools. We have been in Greenwood. We have been in Clarksdale. We have been in Marks. We've been in a couple of places around the Delta. Um, and one of the thing is that my intentions and my role and some of the people who've led our work in Mississippi intentions have been to be very intentional about centering our work in deltas and in the Delta and in communities that need the work the most. Right, because we know that our districts don't have as much funding as other districts. And we know that like parents don't have the luxuries of taking their kids to a pumpkin patch to pick pumpkins because it's fall like other families may have around the state. So we try to provide opportunities like that around for the students in the Delta. How I try to shape our work is us showing up for what that respective community needs and what those babies need, what their parents and teachers need. Because, like in education, what we know that teachers like they have a large caseload, right? Like they have like a ton of kids. They have kids at home. Um, and they're not paid enough. So often they have second jobs. They have a lot going on. So to be everything that a student needs in the classroom is impossible. They're also having the restrictions of being married to a curriculum, trying to reach state goals to pass state testing and all of that kind of stuff. So what we like to be, or what I hope that we're doing, is adding some value, whether it's the social and physical outlet of being able to go into the gardens, because while we're at the schools, the service members plant gardens. The other thing is like the nutritional value that it offers, because we have kids who probably didn't eat kale before, but because they have themselves been growing kale, they eat kale now. We have kids who or will at least try new things when they weren't trying it before, because we offer things like tests in the schools and other things of that nature. Yeah, so the work is, it looks different from school to school. It looks different from district to district. But what we really focus on is trying to make sure, and that's a universal thing, is that we show up in our fullest selves for the babies that we're serving. One of the things I tell every cohort of service members that we have as we're doing our trainings and the such is parents are busy. They're often working multiple shifts. Um, they are multiple jobs, and teachers are the same. So all day long, our babies are hearing, no, stop, sit down, shut up, be quiet, don't do this, don't do that. So one of the things that I insist on is that our service members are the rainbows in that child's day, that day, right? Like we want them to have the best possible time that they can have with us and get the fullest experience of being a child. So that means that they're playing in the dirt while they're gardening, but they're also taught rules about and why um, some of the living things that may have grossed some students out before are really important to our gardens. Why it's important for us to eat things that we grow, and why it's important for them to care about where their food comes from. And what they walk away with is a sense of knowing how to feed themselves in a way that they may not have had without the experience with us, right? So it's not like what we're not going to be doing is telling cafeteria workers as hard as they work. We would never do it. And parents, because they have so much going on, they have like too much to do, that you're not feeding these kids healthy foods. Like that's the last thing anybody wants to hear is what they're not doing. So we try to show the children about introduce them to new things, and then we introduce them to ways to grow those things themselves. In the Delta, we have 3 school districts that where we partner with the Delta Health Alliance, and they have been through COVID been providing the students with at-home gardening kits. So we have kids that are growing lettuce, different types of lettuce, like they're growing not just romaine, or not just iceberg, they're growing all types of lettuces. They're growing different types of greens, herbs, and a lot of different things at home. They also typically every year in the spring, we have a family garden night at 3 of the schools, and we plant the slips for sweet potatoes and harvest them around this time. And so next week they'll start harvesting those sweet potatoes, and the students, their families, and the surrounding communities can have sweet potatoes to take home. So that's fresh foods that they're getting that they grew, and now they have that skill to grow, opposed to having to go to the grocery store. Because what we're taught and what we're told all the time is how important it is to shop on the outer aisles of the grocery store. But the first part of that is, number one, that's where the highest or most expensive things are in the outer aisles of the grocery store. So if we can get parents to shop in the middle aisles, but be able to grow some of the things that they find in the outer aisles at home, that's a win, right? And it supports the parents, and it's an outlet for the children too. Like if you're playing in dirt, like it's hard to be mad and angry if you're playing in dirt, right? Like, so there's like a win-win in a very organic, um, how would I phrase that? I'll just say in an organic sense, like the children are connecting and learning things and learning when they don't even know that they're learning. Like the best part of my job are my site visits. And when I go, I'm always amazed about how much the students know about things that you don't think that they know about, and how much they've learned, and what, like they'll tell me, no, you can't pick that like that. Or you should try it. And I'm like, if I'm like, I don't like that, and they're like, well, you should just try it, because we're encouraging kids to try. We're encouraging them not to say no to new things that you haven't had before. Just try it. It's no big deal if you don't like it. And they're encouraging other adults to do the same. And then we have the teachers that are picking things out of the garden, and they have resources, and those are foods that people can use. And while I am of the belief, and I think most of us are, is not the service members' responsibilities to do that. It is not the school district's responsibility to do that necessarily, but we're doing that because we are in our the schools that we're serving in, are there in communities where they need that assistance, because we have a very unjust food system, right? So not only are the foods that are the least processed foods the most expensive foods, but you also have in some of the communities, and most of the communities that we're serving in, they're either in food deserts or food swamps. And so not only is it challenging because you don't have a grocery store, but that's close by, but what if you don't have transportation to that grocery store? So there's the problems with that. And then what we hear when we hear about where we're the worst at all the where we have the worst outcomes in health, and we hear about the blame being put on those victims of their social and place injustices, right? Like we hear like, you should eat better, you should do this, but like it's not affordable to eat some of the things that you're telling me to eat. Like, and then we look at people and make judgments and assume because a child is overweight that they're eating too much, when they could very well be malnourished and getting empty calories all the time. So what we're doing is trying to fix a societal norm the best way we know how, and the easiest way to do that is to start with children, right? One of the things in particular in Mississippi that I encourage our service members to do is to show up for those kids the way the communities and those schools communities want us to do, because we can't just be working in a, because it does us no good to work in a silo with the kids and want the kids to eat and try new things, but they're discouraged from doing that at home, or you do that and teachers or other adults in the building are saying, ugh, when we're teaching kids not things like don't yuck my yum, right? We're also teaching them that, because again, blame is passed on to the victims of the social ills of the world. So we're teaching them too that, like, what you've been taught that is great and what's your favorite thing to eat is okay to eat. Like, no one is ever going to tell, none of our servicemen is ever going to tell a student that that's like, you shouldn't eat that, that's not healthy. Um, because like it centers whiteness and it centers a European concept of what is appropriate to eat, when we're telling students that are Black and brown, and other students of color, that what they're eating and is culturally appropriate is not healthy for them. Right. So one of the things that our service members in Mississippi, and particularly our service members in the Delta, are doing more of, they're doing a lot of culturally responsive lessons. Like, the kids are learning, like, what are the things that that they eat that are indigenous to the United States, that are indigenous to Africa. I shouldn't say indigenous to the United States, but indigenous to North America. What are indigenous to Africa, and what are the things that are indigenous to Europe. And when we do pollings with the kids, and they're really unofficial, it's like simply like the kids do, like maybe move to one side of the room for if this was grown in Africa, or raise their hand or something like that. So it's really super informal. Like, we don't have numbers behind it, but it's always fascinating when we do those lessons, that the students that think everything that they're learning or everything that they're eating is food that comes from Europe, or that the colonizers brought over, when in fact it's the food that we may have, or our ancestors may have brought over during the Atlantic slave trade, or it was what the indigenous people, the first stewards of our communities, in our of this land, what they were growing all the time, and how European culture and colonization has colonized that and taken it as their own. So that's just some of the ways that we're trying to make sure that we're connecting kids to healthier foods, and connecting them to the earth, right? So one of the things that we've been talking about a lot as an organization is, how do we connect with the communities more? And as I'm leading trainings or talking to other people, I'm often centering the African concept of Ubuntu, like, I am because you are. And that's like all, like, that's not just a person, that's like all of us. So we're also teaching the students about honoring the ground that they're, the earth, and where they're growing the food from, and not and how to do it in a sustainable way, how to do it in a way that doesn't deplenish the resources. And again, I'm always fascinated with how much they learn and can share with me when I get back, because like, I'm not the keeper of that information. Like, I don't know, like this, like I said, the amazing service members, they're the ones who are teaching it. And I go and I'm learning so many things from my babies. And our service members across the state are teaching and serving pre-K to fifth grade. So like, when like little people come up to you and like really school you on some stuff that you didn't know, that's incredibly rewarding.
Okay, so could you elaborate on the characteristics of a food desert, and what's the difference between a food desert and a food swamp for the individuals who don't know what that means?
Thank you. We call those literacy moments in our organization, when someone asks a question that they know someone else may not have. No, thank you for stopping me on that. So food deserts are, I can't tell you like the accepted version of that definition, but it's generally speaking when there are no grocery stores or fresh marketplaces that have fresh marketplaces that are within, I think it's 10 miles or maybe 10 to 15 miles of a community or a neighborhood. Food swamps are where the places that you could get food are like gas stations, Dollar Generals, and places like that where it's not the best qualities of food, are most often highly processed food, but not fresh food.
Okay. So rural communities have some questions for you.
I'll do
Um,
my best to answer.
okay. So the questions are, what about picky eaters? When trying vegetables with kids and they do not like, do you force them to eat it or try another vegetable?
Absolutely not. We don't force them to eat it. We ask them to try it, and we ask them to only take small bites. Like, take a small bite, chew it. We encourage mindful eating. Like, what do you like when they say that they don't like it? Like, what don't you like about it? Is it the flavor of it? Is it the texture of it? And we encourage them. So you probably should try it again in a different way. And then sometimes when the service members do taste tests, they prepare a um, a vegetable or fruit in multiple ways so that the students can see that, like, just because I didn't like it this time, that doesn't mean I won't like it next time, to keep trying it.
Okay. Kiwan, as being that some things are actually unhealthy, how will they be informed of the unhealthy food that they may be eating?
So we're never going to tell a kid that something is unhealthy. We're just not. We'll tell them about healthier choices. We do that because we don't know the resources. We don't know why they're eating that. Because, like, if you tell, we're talking about children and then they're highly impressionable. Well, if you tell a child that, say, macaroni and cheese is not healthy because it's all this gluten and it's processed and cheese and dairy and da 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 da, and that's all that they have, what happens when they go home and don't eat it? And that's all that they have for the evening. Like, we don't want to tell children that what they have or what they've been provided is like terrible for them. We just want to encourage them, when they have opportunities to eat fresher foods and vegetables, to take those opportunities. Because the schools that we serve are schools that are in that serve at least 50% free or reduced lunch. So those are schools that are in lower economic communities, and so their parents don't always have the resources to provide the most ideal foods for them. So yeah, we would never tell a kid that, like, it would have to be like really poisonous, like, to tell them not to eat it, opposed to just something that doesn't have any nutritional value and empty calories. What we do also do is ask, or we're trying to do more of, is to ask parents and teachers and other people in the school to not use food as rewards.
Okay.
So, like, we wouldn't tell kids that candy are not healthy, but you would never see at, I won't say you never, because people don't always follow instructions, but we encourage our service members not to have candies at, and things that are just like highly, highly processed sweets at some of the things that we're having. So, like, I was at a school in Georgia a while ago, because this is before the outbreak. They had chocolate chip cookie dough dip, but the bread or flour part of that was chickpeas.
Mm.
So we try to invent ways that they can eat stuff that's like still fun, delicious things, but never telling them what's not, because we just don't know what's going on at home to say that. And that's not fair to the parents. And that's not fair to them, because then they feel inadequate as well.
Okay, so you have another question.
And do my best
Um,
to answer it.
you're doing great. Thanks, Kenya. What are some vegetables that will boost your immune system? That's from Eat It.
I have no clue. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
So
I agree.
I
Like, I
know,
know that like zinc is really good for you.
yeah,
Vitamin C is really good for you. Um, Typically when the service, it depends on the age group, but typically when the service members are introducing something new, they tend to tell them the health values of it or tell them um, what vitamins and minerals that are in it.
okay. So Edith, as a mama, I know that if you eat vegetables that have zinc, if you take supplements that have what's the other one? Zinc. I know fruits, elderberry, blueberries, things of that nature. Think of what you would put in a smoothie. So you have your spinach, um, and it's another one. I think beets too. But you can send me an email and I have a list in my phone.
Yeah, and I I don't not specifically for immune systems, but I would say this like they're fruits and vegetables that are coming from the earth. So like unless there's an allergic reaction to them, I would say encourage the kids to eat all of them because the other thing, and we do have quite a few exercises and or recipes around Eat the Rainbow. So like I know that we have a recipe for a rainbow smoothie. I know that we have like a rainbow salad. We encourage the kids to have colorful plates when they can control what they're eating,
Okay.
um, or when like there are some choices about the things in the
Okay.
garden that they can eat.
So we have another question.
Okay.
Can serving meals similar to those in their home help to cause, help to, okay, wait, I got it. Can serving meals similar to those in the home help to encourage eating fresher foods and meals?
I think so. We last year, again at a school in the Delta, we had what was it? What was it? What was it? A family dinner night. And so what the service members and the students prepared for that and their parents were there. They did baked chicken, they did greens, mashed sweet potatoes, and hoe cakes. They had lemonade and tea, and they used the mint and some of the other herbs in the garden to season the food and to put in the tea and the lemonade. So yeah, like, and I think that that's really comparable to a Sunday dinner in a lot of houses. It's green cornbread, chicken, and mashed, and not mashed potatoes, but sweet potatoes. And we did mashed, and I don't recall them adding any sugar to it. And again, like with our sweet potato harvest, they, I think it was last Friday, they prepared like several different recipes with just sweet potatoes. Like there were sweet potato smoothies that they made. They did roasted sweet potatoes, and they used the leaves from the sweet potato too, so that they like because we want the kids to know that like that's just as nutritious, and to use the entirety of the plant opposed to what's just typically sold in the store. When they're doing lessons like that and they're going to eat something um, like carrot tops or the leaves to sweet potatoes, they make sure that they tell them like we know that these are non-poisonous, but you want to make sure that when you're picking something that you're not sure about, we don't eat that part. You want to find out first and do some research on it and encourage them to do that.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned ways to get kids to eat. And so Destin has a question. How do you introduce healthy foods into a kid's diet in a fun way? An example being things like smoothies.
So every school that I've been to, the kids love the smoothie days. Like, absolutely love the smoothie days, and they love it no matter what color the smoothie is and what goes in it. And I think part of that is because they help make it. So one of the things that I have found as a parent in my work and just working with kids in general, like if the children are involved in it, they're going to eat it. And then if they're introduced to those things early, they're going to eat it. we have a tendency of saying, like, if you go to dinner at a restaurant, like we have a tendency to order off a kids menu for kids, and that's like always like a grilled cheese sandwich or chicken strips and stuff. But like, what's wrong with them having a salad? You know, like they don't have to eat those things. It's like why can't they have something that's like the adult portion and just split that portion in half and have something that is like in that way they don't have to spend like our taste buds. And I read this recently and I apologize for not remembering the exact number, but like the research says that our taste buds are formed and are solid by the time that we are 4 years old, and they evolve and grow a little bit,
I can see that.
but they don't evolve much more. Fergus Douglas said it's like it's a lot easier and better, and this is not a direct quote.
I know what quote you're talking about.
Say it again.
I said I know what quote you're speaking of.
You want to give the direct one then, so that I won't.
Because I don't remember it.
Okay. But he says that like it's easier and better for us to like train a child than to fix a broken man.
Right.
So if we start giving kids those things earlier, they'll eat it. I have a 22-year-old, and he started eating broccoli as a very small kid, and he was probably 16 or 17 before he would eat it cooked. He was just like, it was disgusting to him cooked because it just supposed to taste like this. And there's so many things that he prefers to eat raw because like he's like, you can't taste all the goodness in it when it's and he was a child because we didn't keep a lot of candy and foods and candies and sweets in the house other than special occasions. Like he was opposed to like stealing a blow pop like I would have off the counter when I was a little girl. He was like stealing plums, thinking no one saw him. So I think it's like encourage them earlier and involving them in the processes as often as we can and as much as we can. Like
I think that's true because my youngest has spent a lot of times with my parents. And so my parents don't do all the junk food, and he eats real food, and he eats his vegetables because he's been exposed to it, and he's 5. And so I think if we start to consider what we're exposing children to, or even ourselves, when I'm eating, depending on, it really doesn't depend on what it is. My child wants it just because mama's eating it. So I think if we go about demonstrating how to eat healthy foods, even if it's a smoothies, on Snapchat today, one of the filters is the naked smoothie, and I buy them a lot on the way to work, on the way home from Walmart, Dollar General store, wherever I can get that smoothie. And so when children see you eating and healthy and drinking the smoothies, a lot of times they want to do it because mama or whomever it's a cool thing to do.
Right.
And it's good for you.
Yeah, and so that's another reason why we encourage the teachers not to and we're trying to develop now because Food Corps is a very young organization. We're just in our 10th year. So we are a baby and we're still developing and growing and evolving. And one of the things that we're working towards is lessons for teachers and other adults in the school, because like what we see the kids, like it does us no good to say that like a Coke is not healthy when your favorite teacher is going into the cafeteria with the Diet Coke every day.
Every day.
And I tell people anecdotally, like I remember as a child, I eat chocolate covered almonds and I don't drink sodas anymore, but and used to drink a Coke every day because one of my favorite teachers, like, and I can still clearly see her like it was yesterday in elementary. She would sit at her desk. And when she wasn't like, whenever she went and sat down, opposed to being up and about, she would sip on her Diet Coke and eat chocolate covered almonds. And I know that I got that from her because I always thought it was so cool because I thought she was the coolest teacher ever. And so I know that we get those habits from what we see adults doing and what we give the children earlier. It's just like spices and things like that. Like some of that tolerance comes from developing the tolerance as a child.
Right. I can agree with you. I remember my teachers, there was these big mugs that they had, and they would decorate them with the paint pens. And I could not wait to get grown to have a big mug with ice and Coke. And I've just kind of weaned myself off so much caffeine and Coke. And part of it is because of the pandemic. I used to spend hours at Starbucks, and now, of course, I don't go. But that also helped me to recognize that I was drinking a lot of caffeine, a lot of shots in the espresso. And so that ultimately can impact your ability to be healthy and your immune system.
Right. And then another, like, I am like, I'm addicted to caffeine myself. And one of the things that when I was beginning to not drink sodas, like it wasn't like a cold turkey thing. Like, and I think that's another thing not to do to children either. It's like, we're going to be a clean house and just take all of these fun things away from them, because now that they're going to have regrets about it, they're going to resent it, they're going to sneak it and all of that kind of stuff. But like with my coffee, because I started drinking coffee in elementary school, again, because adults were drinking it.
My grandmother was just in your cup.
Right. And my favorite elders in the family drank coffee. So that's one of the reasons why I used to drink coffee every day. But as I became a bit more health conscious and paying attention to the things I put in my body, I was like, you know what? I don't have to have this cream in it. You know, I stopped doing cream, and then I stopped doing sugar, and then I stopped doing a sugar substitute, and now I just drink coffee black. And now I don't have it every day. Like, I go weeks at a time without it. It's like gradual steps too.
So you mentioned briefly how changes have happened with how you engage with children because of COVID. Do you want to elaborate some more on how COVID has impacted the work that you and food co service members are
Yeah.
delivering
So
service?
yeah, our work is school based, and so schools in March started closing down around the country. And so our service members had to very quickly adapt to how to get their service hours and how to serve their students. Because one of the things, and I've ended up on so many calls with people from around the country talking about the service members in Mississippi, because I don't know how much you all know about the AmeriCorps program, but the AmeriCorps program is a federal program. And so some of the guidelines are come from either that federal agency or Congress. And so whether or not they had to complete their required number of service hours, it was going to take an act of Congress to change that. And so we didn't know. But what the now I can't think of it. The Corporation for National and Community Services said it said that service members could take an early exit due to COVID. And I just brag so much about our service members in Mississippi, because none of them took an early exit, because their first priority was like, well, what about our kids? I just want to see my kids. And so they started coming up with ways to respond. Initially in Jackson, and this is across the country, like school meals are federally funded. So there are all these restrictions about when you can get them, who you can offer to them. So school cafeteria, child nutrition departments around the country were like pausing, like, how do we feed these kids? We know these kids are hungry. So there were a few restaurants in Jackson that decided to, like, look, there are children in this city hungry, so we're going to make sure that they eat. And they got together and started serving meals. So the service members in Jackson started going and helping deliver and passing out those meals. I was hearing anecdotally from some of my friends that are not in the promised land like me, with a 22-year-old. They have smaller people, and they were at work like, what do we do with these kids? They were losing their minds. And while it was funny to me, I was told the service members instantly came up with, like, we could do seed packets, and the kids can grow stuff at home on their own. Well, they had a conversation across the state, because we get them together periodically to learn from one another. And the service members here, well, not here because I'm in Jackson now, but the service members in the Delta, they decided to do larger garden packets and give, like, not just a couple of seeds, but like packets and packets of seeds or seedlings for families to plant together. And they started doing like Watch Me Grow. And then some of the service members were doing things like, I have a service member that is a pescatarian, and two last year that were vegans. And so what they did was they, like, on Mondays they had meatless Mondays, and whatever they were cooking in their households, they would videotape it and send to the kids and or post on social media. So the kids would get like a full recipe from that. They would get a grocery list, so they learned some around language arts on that. They learned some measuring on that, which they had already been learning with them. It was just the way that they did it remotely. And because we serve in areas that have a high level of poverty, we knew that the kids were like really hungry. So it's like, we have this produce in the garden. So what do we do about them? What do we do about this produce that it doesn't go waste? And how do we feed our kids? So they also started delivering produce similar to a CSA, when they would just gather up what they were growing and deliver it to the families. And then at some point, because they started growing more, they started giving away to folks generally in the community. And now they've been partnering with the foundation of Washington, the Washington County Community Foundation, and I'm drawing a blank now, but several other food banks in Washington County and I think a few in Bolivar County to make sure that that we were distributing the produce that we were growing. And we had a service member in Greenwood last year, and because the school wasn't doing anything coordinated, they just did not get that together in a timely manner. She self-organized with community members and started doing health boxes and she started a sewing circle. So they started making face masks to deliver to elderly, vulnerable adults and children in the community to make sure that they were taken care of, and then purchasing things like hand sanitizer, wipes, and those things for families as well, because we knew that they would need that stuff. So like the service members are responding to the needs that are in their communities, opposed to just doing what, like, hey, you should be doing this there, when that may not be the case. And like in Jackson, JPS finally started doing emergency meal distribution. The service members started helping with that. And because it is federally funded, they were required to use that to charge adults, like I think it's $2.75 for breakfast and $3.75 for lunch. So when other community partners, along with the district and a couple of departments within the school district, we were having a meeting, and they were telling us about the number of students in the district that were either housing insecure and food insecure. And what we told them, if like, we know that if from our work, because we're community-based organizations, if you have that many kids that are housing insecure, you have that many kids that are food insecure, there are definitely grown-ups that live with them that are food insecure and housing insecure. So how do we help them? So the corporate citizens and just private citizens in Jackson started donating money, and we started preparing meals, hot plates and fresh produce we partnered with Footprint Farms in Jackson to start giving weekly, I think it was 15-pound boxes of produce every week in the hot meals. And like that came from us, the service members, like, how can we serve the kids in Jackson? How can we serve the kids in Jackson? Another service member, because she and her husband have smaller kids, she didn't feel comfortable being in contact with that many families in a day. So she found a pantry that she can go and help prepare the boxes that they were giving out with minimum contact to the public. So that the service members were answering the needs of their respective communities. And that's how we've been staying connected to the kids.
That's great. So you have another question.
Okay.
Is hi Kenyon. This is Sharika. I hope you remember me from the Young Dams of Mississippi. It's nice to know you're still doing great things for our state. What impact do you think COVID will have on our food suppliers in the years to come?
I think COVID is going to have a very traumatic impact on our everything, like all the systems for years to come. Like these are problems that we're going to see for generations. I don't think that we've seen the worst of it for our health systems. And because Mississippi and other states did not expand Medicaid, and we already have rural hospitals that were closed to begin with, we're now having rural hospitals that are eventually going to go bankrupt from treating people. Um, then we're going to have people who are losing their lives because they don't want to go in and counter a bill, right? Then we have like the like schools being shut down, right? So like schools being shut down, like that's going to impact Black children, brown children, low income children, children in rural communities for generations. Because even in a community, like a child that has all the resources in their home, they still may not have adequate access to internet to be able to do the in-person learning. And then if they come to school, like it's like a catch 22. Like if there ever was a catch 22, COVID is one, right? Um, so like if they come to school, then you have teachers that are in harm ways. You have the elders in their family, like grandparents and great grandparents and other elders that may have health problems. You have the folks in the cafeteria, the janitor staff, like all of those people. And most of the what we've learned is that most of the cafeteria workers and most of the janitorial staffs in public schools, they have second jobs. So now they're further the spread because they've contacted something. Like it's just to be honest, and I tell people all the time that I'm a pragmatic optimist, but I am just not optimistic about the outcomes of COVID at all. I think one of the things that we can say has been positive to it. It has highlighted the injustices across our community in every way. Like it is no mistake that COVID is hitting indigenous communities the hardest, Black communities the hardest, Latinx communities the hardest. There's no mistake of that, right? And like, I just, yeah, it's it's a tough road to plow for all of us for generations to come.
Yeah, the trickle down effect is definitely impacting, because now that I don't live in a rural area, access to internet is difficult. You can have the most expensive and fastest that's being offered, and if it storms, you don't have internet access. If it's cloudy, you don't have internet access, or if too many trees are around you and I live on a farm now, so there are a number of trees, and depending on the weather, if it's windy, I might not have access to internet nor to a phone signal. So I'm even impacted by it just by being in a rural area again now. How can students get more involved? So I'm big on civic engagement, community engagement, and that's the point of this organization. How can students, what would you recommend students do to be more involved in the community doing work in regards to food systems in Mississippi, especially in the Mississippi Delta, despite the existence of COVID?
Yeah. So as it relates to food systems, I think finding out from child nutrition departments in schools, and I say that because I work with schools, um, our food system is gigantual. Like we have production, we have processing, we have like there's so many things that we have. Um, I think the way that we can help and plug into a system is finding out from our child nutrition departments at our schools, like how are they serving the kids. And I would say this too, like we're at Valley, and one of the groups of what people don't consider as kids, but like they should be cared for too, are the students that are on college campuses. because like with COVID, there are some schools that were shut down. So like there are students that went homeless because of that. And if they're homeless, you know that they don't have anything to eat. Right.
right? Or
Um,
they work and they miss when the cafeteria is open.
exactly.
Um, if they have different types of food needs, if they have food allergies and it's
Exactly.
not being provided. Oh, I know because I have a college student, my son, and so he has allergies and he can't eat certain foods. And having that access to food is very important. And so you're correct. A lot of college students are being impacted by COVID and the access to food, big
So
time.
yeah, and I would say like maybe there's a way to start a food pantry on Valley's campus if there isn't one.
So it was in the process of being started, and then COVID hit. So we have received some funds for it, but the actual planning has kind of paused because of COVID. Like everything, COVID stopped a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it was a food pantry in the starting in March. Yeah.
So like the question about the outcomes and the one of the positive outcomes of COVID is going to be is giving us a time to stop, right? And look at and re-examine and examine and learn and unlearn the way that we've been doing things. I think from this, like folks will figure out a way. There has to be a better way to meet and to get things in order, right? Somebody's gonna figure that out for the university, right? Like, and then we have like people where we're not relying on the food system so much. Like folks are gonna be growing stuff more at home, and people are growing things more at home, and they're taking ownership of that. And then that's not like then we're being kinder to the planet because like it makes no sense in a place like the Mississippi Delta where like it's some of the most fertile grounds you can find, and at one point off of the labor of enslaved Black people and stealing from indigenous people, Mississippi was the fourth largest economy in the world. In the world, the cotton industry built this nation. Like the Industrial Revolution happened because of cotton. There was a time when royal folks and the Pope would only wear cotton that was Mississippi made. Like the thing at one point was Egyptian cotton. You know, it was a thing about Mississippi cotton. It makes no sense now that we have ground that is as fertile as the ground in the Delta, and we have people hungry in the Delta, and we pass by corn on a regular basis there. Like we pass by soybean on a regular basis there.
Every day, depending on the direction I go, every day.
Like
Um,
so that
I,
makes sense. And so I think like some of that means like we have to take agency for ourselves and practice some food sovereignty and be like, we don't have to participate in it because like there's gonna come a time when the grocery store shelves are empty again. How are we gonna feed our families?
yeah, I think people need to start considering how they can grow. At one point, when I moved in from a house to an apartment, on my patio, I was growing tomatoes, bell peppers, and what else did I have? Herbs for my pasta. And so they were in small little containers. I think we need to start looking at how we can be sustainable for ourselves because with the weather changing, people are not going to be able to get out of their homes. The weather in North Mississippi is significantly different than in Central Mississippi. I'm learning that now. I forgot it 20 years ago. I forgot it. And we need to start being prepared in terms of food and making sure we look out for other people.
Is
Um,
that
I
is
think now, and that was a discussion on last week about whether or not communities are working together. And I think having this discussion about the food systems and how we need to work in the community with food, we need to start looking at how we can work together to ensure that our neighbor, our cousin, our friend, our roommate is actually eating. Because you know, my research is on food insecurity, and when someone is, excuse me, when someone is sick, you can tell that they're sick But when someone is food insecure, unless they tell you, you won't know that they don't have food if they haven't eaten.
You
Um,
won't know. And I think too, like I think because and I think when we start taking care of our community like that, like that's when we start getting and reconnecting to our roots, right? Like in so many African civilizations, there was never such thing as an orphanage. There was never such thing as a nursing home because the community took care of those people, right? So like, how are we taking care of folks? And like, I'm not suggesting anyone do this at all, but like when I think about to my childhood and growing up and um my grandparents would have a hog killing. They would call my parents down from Jackson and we'll all go, and other people from the community, folks that I've never seen before, be there because my because my grandparents are providing not just meat for them and their family, but for the community. Like we should start taking care of that. And by the same token, when other folks are growing things, they're sharing it with my relatives. And we have to get back to where we're sharing like um, I am because you are. Like, and we really have to really have to we really have to reconnect to who we are. Like when you suffer, I suffer. When you thrive, I thrive. And if that is really our mindset, I think that our when we're going into and working in these communities, like there's a role for everybody to do. Because like I think one of the things that we do or make the mistake of is thinking, okay, my community is hungry. How do I fix it? Well, you're not gonna have all the answers by yourself, but there are definitely other people in the community that have the answers. And I think one of the mistakes that we make in the nonprofit sector is we're all doing this great righteous work, but and we go into communities as if they're broken. And one of the things I tell the service members, one of the things I tell my colleagues all the time, these communities are not broken. They do not need to be fixed. Like we are not needed. We're a nice to have, but we are not needed. So we need to go in and learn what it is that the community needs and wants and help and support them in that, but not thinking, how can we fix it? Because communities are not broken. And the very thing that we're attempting to fix oftentimes is not broken. I was participated in a in this working group that did this research around some towns in the Delta, and they were talking about the level of poverty, and they walked away giving this number of food insecurity in very specific places in the Delta. And one of the towns they mentioned, this person that was in the group, he was from that town, and he was like, I go back there every weekend. I don't know people that are food insecure. Like the people I know, like, what are your questions asking? Like, because the question was asking, can you go and do da 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 da? It was like the people I know when they're hungry, they get it from other people in the community.
mm,
So like they were attempting to address the problem that wasn't there
mm,
because the community was taking care of themselves. They were asking the wrong questions that were not relevant to that community, right? The
mm,
other part of that is like problems have solutions.
mm,
Like there is a solution as and the solution lies within the stakeholders. Like the solutions that for what happens in Greenwood are not with me in Jackson. Those solutions are in Greenwood. If I'm there to help. I'm not there because they need me. I am there solely to help. I this week I've been doing some training. And in one of the sessions that I was participating in, I heard it a different way, but this was the first time I heard it put quite this way, and it preached to my soul, like it really whispered to my soul. The gentleman said that his mentor told him, before you do anything in a community, before you make any decision in a community, if the members of the community are not there all of the way, if they not decided or help you decide what that decision is, then what you think you're doing for the community, you're very likely doing to the community.
oh, wow, that's profound. That's,
Isn't it?
so guess what?
What?
It is 7 o'clock.
Ah,
We
awesome.
have been talking for a long time. There's one more question from Jeremiah.
Okay.
Be- Because of the rising number of confirmed COVID cases, we have the potential to undergo another lockdown. What can be done on an individual level to ensure that the food we buy is not wasted and properly conserved?
So I think using the food that we have. I have one of my colleagues is hugely concerned with food waste. He leads our work in Maine, and he does a lot of work with food waste. So they have in a lot of the districts that he works in, and he's working to push legislation for the state that they have share tables where children, if they don't want something on their plates, that they could share it. And he was doing some research, and one of what he learned was that the most food that is wasted is the food that we waste at home. So we go to the supermarket, we haven't shopped our pantries yet, you know? We
Hmm.
go to the supermarket and we get there because we have a taste for this and we have a taste for that, and we have things stored up forever. Like we need to like actually cook the food that we have at home before it goes to waste.
Or meal plan. I noticed that I go to the grocery store now because I'm trying to stop eating out. I'm literally going every day. This week I went every day. And I know next week I will be meal planning so that I won't go to the grocery store as much. And that way I know what I have and I can use what I have. Because a lot of times I buy water and I already have a jug of water that I just forgot to put in my car. And so I think if we start to look at meal planning and using what we have, there are apps that can help you figure out like I have this, this, and this. What can I make? Um, and try to, I think it's all recipes. And so you put in the ingredients that you have and it gives you recipes on what you can make. I think we have to be really cognizant of that. I think we need to,
And then I would say this too, like combining the two as you meal plan, because I typically cook on Sundays. And when I don't cook on Sundays, I end up ordering a whole bunch of food in. Um, Grubhub and the such is my friend.
Mhm.
Um, but when I meal plan, like the smartest version of my meal plan is I take the time to see what's in the cabinets first
Mhm.
and plan my meals based on what I already have, so that what I'm going to pick up is something fresh. Not I'm not going to buy my seventh bag of rice.
Right. Yeah, right. So that wraps up our talk today on the impact of COVID-19 on food policy work. On Monday, we have another event in regards to surviving during these times. We'll have clinical psychologist Dr. Brian Turner from Xavier University in New Orleans. Please look for that announcement. I appreciate everyone that participated and joined us in all of the questions. I hope that you are safe and healthy this weekend and see you next week. Kenya, do you have any last words?
No, I don't. I will say this, that if you know anyone who may be interested in serving in our service program, feel free to email me. My email address is Kenya, Kenya, .Collins, COLLINS, at foodcorps, FOOD,
And if anybody didn't catch that, you can send me an email and I will get it to Ms. Collins. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Bye. Thank you so much for
Bye.
having me.
Thank you.